Hi, I'm Carter Clues. Welcome to Inside Judicial Watch. The IRS, nobody's favorite topic, and rightly so. Today, we're going to talk about an aspect of the IRS which is particularly alarming. It's IRS corruption. Perhaps no organization under Barack Obama was more thoroughly corrupted than the IRS. An organization that began targeting his political opponents, I would say, rather ruthlessly, but we have the expert with us. We have with us today Judicial Watch Senior Attorney and a second-time guest, Ramona Cotca. Ramona?
Hi, Carter.
Welcome.
Thank you.
very, very much for joining us again.
Sure.
We got rave reviews for you last time we're on. I'm sure, even with this topic, it's going to be the same. The IRS, if I can just briefly give a little background here as to my own perspective, okay? That
Sure.
When this entire targeting of American citizens by the IRS began under Obama, in October 20th, 2010, Obama gave a speech in Philadelphia in which he went after nonprofit groups and talked about the time that it was time to perhaps deal with them and not let them be saying the things that they were saying. This, of course, is when he was worried about re-election. The same month, coincidentally, Lois Lerner of the IRS gave a speech at Duke University in which she said, the next year we're going after nonprofits. And as you well know, because you're the one that uncovered it, that same month, she colluded with the DOJ to bring criminal charges against the nonprofits. So let's go back. Let's take it from the top. When you first discovered the IRS targeting of conservative groups, what happened?
Well, Judicial Watch has had at least 8 lawsuits that dealt with this issue, and from different directions. In 2013, IRS, Lois Lerner made that statement that everybody refers back to,
Right.
with the planted question, saying that there was improper criteria or selection, and that it was just some agents back in Cincinnati.
Rogue agents back in Cincinnati.
Rogue agents, correct.
She had no idea.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and Judicial Watch got on the ball and filed a lot of FOIA requests, and much more than 8 FOIA requests that resulted in the 8 lawsuits that we filed against the IRS and FEC, and then also the DOJ as well.
And you're the one who did the legwork and went into the courtrooms to argue these cases.
Yes, a lot of them. I mean, there were other attorneys
Great.
as well
Good.
at our organization who's worked on this issue, but I worked on a lot of them. And what we found as a result of our FOIA requests and our litigation is really astounding. So when Lois Lerner, as you're saying, in October 2010, when she said that they're going to go after these nonprofits next year, that was false because they were already going after these nonprofits. And the records that we have found and disclosed reveal that it wasn't rogue agents, that there were actually emails where it was directed that any approval or any decisions with respect to applications submitted by nonprofits, and most of them were, 75% of them were conservative. At least 75%.
Conservative groups who Obama feared.
Correct.
Opposed him. Let's just state the case. They
Correct.
opposed Barack Obama. Suddenly, they're in the crosshairs of the IRS.
Correct. And these records show that every decision with respect to processing their application had to be approved by Lois Lerner or somebody in her office in Washington, D.C. This completely contradicts President Barack Obama's statement that is some rogue agents or some low-level employees in the IRS who don't know what they're doing, boneheaded decisions.
Boneheaded decisions, that's what he said, right?
But this was actually happening in D.C., in Washington, D.C., and it was calculated. And it started back in 2009 and 2010. We have emails where we're shown that not only was there denial or dragging of the applications of these nonprofit organizations, but also they were targeting the donors who were applying, the donors who were supporting these nonprofits, and they used the gift tax, which is something that's been it has not been used for that purpose. They used it from 2009, 2010 to July of 2011 until the IRS finally said, we're going to put an end to this. They knew it was incorrect. They knew it was unlawful.
These, if I'm not mistaken, Lois Lerner, in going after these donors, the individual Americans, the donors to these nonprofits groups she had already targeted, turned over, what was it, 21 separate disks, computer disks with 113,000 donor identities on them. Is that right? Or no, donor.
So let me just correct you. That was right before when you had mentioned that in 2010, Lois Lerner met with DOJ about criminal prosecution. A few days before that meeting, the IRS had sent over about 22 disks or so, over 1 million pages of tax returns of these nonprofit organizations.
The individuals who had contributed to them, right?
Well, now, there are these tax returns, but because the IRS, the way they went after them is asking improper questions through these questionnaires, who are your donors, which was an improper inquiry. That's how they got the donor information, and then that's how they had the information to know who to audit. Now they finally did put an end to that, realizing how improper it was, or that they were going to get caught.
They were going to get caught.
One or the two or both, but that's where they had the information.
What is a bolo? It's a term that came up frequently as you continued conducting, that you and your colleagues at Judicial Watch continued conducting the investigation of the IRS targeting of conservative groups. What is a bolo? How was that used?
So bolo was be on the lookout. These were terms that they had identified how to spot these organizations, and they were basically based on words and language and not activity. And the law is based on activity. You're supposed to look when you're applying for a non-status for a nonprofit status under 501c4.
Right.
Your restrictions as to activities that you can't do a certain amount of political activity, that it has to be educational and that sort of thing.
You're allowed to do a certain amount of
political
activity.
Okay. The law, from my understanding, is it's loose with respect. It doesn't identify 50% of your activity has to be this or that. It's a little bit looser than that. Now, the way that they had identified which organizations to target is by their names. So they used terms like Tea Party, Patriots. I can't think of anything right now off the top of my head.
Good government organizations, right? Tea parties.
So, and that's completely improper. And actually, in 2013, after all of this came out, after TICTA had initiated its own investigation, TICTA is the watchdog within the Treasury Department.
Right, Inspector General for
Inspector General, yes.
Inspector General for the Treasury Department.
Yes.
Did an investigation, but let's be clear. By this time, they were getting pressure from groups.
Correct.
Yes, like
correct.
Yes.
And that is why they could not but admit the fact that they used improper labels, and they actually submitted emails and directions to IRS employees saying, you are supposed to look for activity. You are not supposed to make any determination on the processing of these applications based on language or words that are in the name of an organization.
But the bolos had told them to do exactly that.
Yeah.
And the names chosen were names of conservative groups.
Yeah.
They were to be targeted. Now, at one point, I think we did one of the lawsuits you filed, we got back 695 pages, and one of the disclosures was that the IRS tried to make kind of a deal with them. If you shut up, maybe we'll let you have your nonprofit status. Tell us about that.
Right. So this is actually in our what we call our main IRS case. This has been pending since May of 2013 when we filed it. So we're 4 years later. 4 years later, late last year, the IRS said, oh, wait, we have some more documents that we didn't look at. And this is after we were in front of Judge Sullivan, if you recall, back in 2014, I believe. So that's 3 years ago, where the judge said you need to submit and you need to produce all these records on a monthly basis. About a year and a half later, we thought we had all the records, and then the IRS comes back and says, oh, actually, we didn't look at everything. So in these documents that you're talking about, that's where we see that post May 2013, what the IRS was trying to do is, well, we'll go ahead and we may be able to expedite your application, but only if you agree to restrict your activities.
Restrict your activities, meaning I'm just
under the law. So
under
it's,
the law.
it's
I'm just interpret that as meaning stop criticizing Barack Obama.
Right.
I'm sorry, that's my interpretation.
Restrict your political activity.
Restrict your political activities.
Correct, which you are legally able to do under the law. There's no legal restriction for it. And in fact, in the letters that the IRS submitted said, this is not in order to comply with the law, but rather if you want to do this exchange and agreement with the IRS, it's a tit for tat.
If you want to get
we'll
your
process
IRS
your
approval,
application faster. You've already waited 2 or 3 years for them, or however long the organization has waited. They've already dragged their feet on it. And then they're saying, we'll agree to expedite it if you agree to restrict some of your political activities.
So in short, if you want to get your tax exemption, you need to learn to shut up. I mean, that's essentially what they're saying here. And lest anybody think that, you remember when this all came out, and you'll remember it well, and Barack Obama was, oh really, all I know is what I read in the paper. Well, let me correct that, because the head of the IRS during all this time, the head of the IRS, Doug Shulman, during this exact time we're talking about, when all these terrible things were being done to Americans, Shulman visited the Obama White House 157 times. But Barack Obama, I was just shocked when I shocked.
Wasn't
I'm
aware
shocked.
of that
Yeah,
number.
there we go. 157 times.
Wow.
Between 2009 and, coincidentally, November 2012, Election Day.
Wow. When all of this was happening.
So here we have a case where they clearly targeted the conservative groups. There simply is no doubt about it.
Oh, yes.
And our lawsuits uncovered the activity. Before we move away from the targeting, give us a quick view of the destroyed computer records.
Of the records and the records
Allegedly
issue.
destroyed.
Sure. So we have this case pending in the U.S. District Court for D.C. in front of Judge Sullivan, as I mentioned. The IRS is producing records, and they are telling us that, you know, we have so many number of emails and we're going to complete production by XY date.
Right.
We all of a sudden find out as a result, I think it was through the one of the congressional committees,
Right.
that said that that discovered that there's a huge gap of Lois Lerner's emails. Where are Lois Lerner's emails?
Missing emails.
Now, let me tell you, when the IRS is producing these records, at that point in the litigation, in the lawsuit, IRS doesn't, or typically the agencies don't tell us where they're retrieving these records from. So we don't know if they're coming from Lois Lerner's email system or if they're coming from another custodian who Lois Lerner was communicating with. So based on the records we had at that point, we didn't know whether there was a gap or not, or where the records were coming from. So obviously, when we hear of the revelation that there are about 2 years worth of emails that are missing from Lois Lerner, we filed an emergency motion with the court because it needed to be addressed. The IRS never told us anything about that, and never told the court. Mind you, this is a time frame when the agencies are making representations to the court that they are conducting a good. In good faith.
Yeah, a thorough check
search
on all the records, right?
So we were in front of Judge Sullivan, and Judge Sullivan thought it was very important and ordered the IRS to produce, I believe, about 7 affidavits or declarations to the court explaining what had happened, where the recovery tapes are there any recovery and backups. And actually, the IRS denied it until TICTA came in the following year and told Congress there were backup tapes. But guess what? While our lawsuit was pending, those backup tapes were destroyed. And guess what other piece of information came out? The IRS could have had them. It's just that nobody bothered to ask the IRS employees for these backup tapes that contain all of her emails. So there are
totally duplicitous.
I mean, it's
totally duplicitous.
Yes. I mean, well, You know, they didn't lift a finger. When you had the IRS commissioner come and testify in front of Congress saying that he will not leave any stone unturned to make sure
Right.
that all these records will be turned over to Congress and obviously in front of any judge or court where the IRS is a party, they didn't lift a finger to either inform the court thoroughly where these records could have been potentially, or inquire for the employees and let them know we need these backup tapes, because there was a litigation hold letter. Litigation hold letter means if there's a pending lawsuit,
Right.
there was an order sent to employees, you can't destroy any of these records that pertain to this lawsuit until you have word, until the lawsuit is concluded and the legal matters concluded, you have to make sure you preserve all of these. So that's, and all of this was lost as a result of about 7 laptops failing, including Lois Lerner and some of the other top officials who she was working with at the time.
And then if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, but then after the fact they did find some of the backups they said did not exist, correct?
Correct, they did. They found about, I believe, about 400 and some, and 700 and some backup tapes were destroyed. Either they found 400 and some and 700 were destroyed, or the flip-flop.
Or the flip-flop.
Yeah.
Either way, a substantial number.
And yes.
So we know the targeting took place thanks to your leadership and Judicial Watch uncovering the truth. What about, at the same time all this is going on though, they're not just stopping with targeting these groups and harassing these groups and denying them their tax exemption. They're also trying to get them in other ways. Tell us about what the Lois Lerner and the IRS did, colluding illegally colluding with the Federal Election Commission.
Right. So there was collusion on several fronts with other agencies, including FEC. Back in 2010, I believe, there are emails in a different lawsuit that another attorney in our organization handled, where we obtained records showing that FEC officials, who, by the way, Lois Lerner headed, prior to moving over to the
FEC
she was at
before
the
she went to the
FEC.
IRS, the swamp.
And asked the IRS whether this conservative organization, whether it had denied or approved its status. Now, what's interesting about that email exchange is that the FEC wasn't yet investigating that organization formally, because it needs to vote on whether to investigate an organization or not. And actually, it voted not to investigate that organization. So the fact that the FEC official is inquiring of the IRS whether a determination or anything related to its tax records of an organization, and the IRS responding, and Lois Lerner did respond to those emails, that's unlawful disclosure of taxpayer information. There's no lawful reason to disclose that.
This, by the way, was at the same time she was referring to conservatives, according to the records we retrieved, as crazies. They're all crazies.
I think it was around the same time.
About the same time,
Yeah.
which, by the way, was also the term Barack Obama liked to use for conservatives. So maybe they might have talked to each other at some point. At any rate, so we'd see the targeting, we see the collusion, illegal collusion with the FEC. Talk to us about what you found about the IRS and Lois Lerner's illegal collusion with the Department of Justice and the FBI, which is frankly very, very frightening.
It's troubling, and those are the discs. This goes back to the discs that we talked about earlier. Back in 2010, 20-some discs were transferred over with over 1 million pages of tax records from the FBI, from the IRS to the FBI.
Which is illegal.
Which 6103, part of the U.S. Code, makes it unlawful for disclosure, unless there is, you're in courtroom or whatever, and you're required by a court or under the law to disclose
Which they were
it.
not.
This
Yeah.
is not. This is not what that's talking about. But clearly was unlawful, and the fact actually by the FBI's actions, because after a while they realized they were wrong and they returned them. They said, "Oh, we didn't open these and we returned them."
They didn't open them.
So they say.
But she went to the.
But IRS should know better.
The IRS
I mean,
should know
she's
better.
she's the head. She's a top official within the agency. She knows 6103. She knows the regulations that she's restricted by, and the rules that she's confined by. And she knows what's lawful and what's not, or she should have.
And so they then said, oh, our mistake, no harm done. And you know, I've never, in all my years dealing with the IRS, or anybody I've ever known dealing with the IRS, if they were caught doing something which was illegal on their tax returns, the IRS never accepted them responding, oh, my mistake, no harm done. Do you recall?
I have not heard of that.
I
no.
haven't had it happen with me. I don't. Maybe there is someone out there. Maybe one of our viewers out there said that. I don't think so. So, but they wanted criminal charges against these people.
Yes.
Criminal charges against
criminal
Americans.
investigations. Yes.
Investigations.
Yeah. So that was also back. So this was in 2010. There's another meeting that we disclosed, or we uncovered, and actually Congress didn't know about it, and it got some members of Congress very riled up. There was an email between Lois Lerner and DOJ officials about a meeting back in 2013, shortly before all of this came to light, about potentially prosecuting these organizations for falsifying information on their application. So they're asking improper questions of these officials. And then they want, or these organizations.
Of these organizations.
And then they want to prosecute them based on the information, saying that some of the information is not true.
This was absolutely ruthless. This was
They
ruthless.
went at all angles and whatever they possibly could, either to deny or just prolong, I mean, we have records in the main IRS case I was talking about, where there's correspondence with Lois Lerner and her team saying, oh, just ask it or try to stall them in some way. Just send them another questionnaire or something just to keep it going.
All of this.
I'm not quoting it for word, but something to that effect.
All of this in the time leading up to Barack Obama's re-election campaign in 2012.
Yes.
I mean, let's not make any mistake about that, folks. We're seeing activity that was clearly intended to affect an election and re-elect a president who, in October 20th, 2010, said this was what he was going to do, go after these very groups. We have time for one more case of that you have just filed, as a matter of fact, and thank you for it, of IRS collusion with another illegal collusion with another government entity. And this one actually does not involve Lois Lerner, because by this time she had been given her retirement with full benefits and a $43,000 bonus. Good work, Lois. The IRS and HHS, what happened there, the case you just filed?
Yeah, so we're seeking records of communication between IRS and HHS officials because there were reports. Once Obamacare what became mandatory, such that taxpayers who opted out of getting the health coverage, where they ended up deciding for themselves, it's better for me to pay the tax rather than pay the high premium.
Tax penalty.
Right. So after that, there was a campaign that had started from within the administration, the Obama administration, to encourage these individual taxpayers, to sign up onto to Obamacare. And what is interesting is that the HHS was targeting individuals who opted for this, who opted for the tax penalty, but specifically for those individuals, and the only way they had that information is from the IRS. Again, we come back to your taxpayer information and the privacy.
Private taxpayer information.
It's private.
Handed over to HHS so they can harass people into signing up for Obamacare. I mean, that's the way I interpret it.
Right. Well, this is so we are in the middle of the document production, but what we're finding so far is the lengths and the maneuvering that the administration did to try to get around this, because they realize that 6103 creates an issue for them in trying to do this. So what they try to do is, the IRS contracted with HHS, you help us out and give us materials that we'll go ahead and send this information to the individual taxpayers. And that cost, I mean, I think we just put out a press release a few weeks ago in the millions.
Millions. In the millions.
In the millions. And where the question, is it legal, is it not, arises is, the statute, the Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act statute, actually permits the IRS to work with HHS secretary only to send a notice to those individuals who opted for the penalty, just to let them know what options they have, what may be on the exchanges.
Right.
These letters that we've gotten so far go far beyond that, and that's also discussed in our recent press release. I think it's just been 2 weeks ago or so.
That's right.
That we issued
Yeah,
it.
about 2 weeks ago.
Where they have 6 different versions to see what will actually be more effective, and some of them are telling the individuals how much money they're going to owe, what their penalty is going to be, and that it could be a lot more depending on how much you make.
These letters, Ramona, I'm not a lawyer, but I have written a lot of direct mail. Some of you may have received letters in the past, before I came with Judicial Watch, direct mail letters I wrote for private organizations. I'm going to tell you the truth. Had I read these letters that the HHS sent after they colluded with the IRS. They are threatening letters. They are dunning letters. They are letters that say, hey, you pay up or we're going to charge you more. Had I written letters like that for the private organizations I worked with, if they were mailed, postal mail, I would have been arrested by the postal inspectors for threatening letters, for intimidating, trying to intimidate people. Had they been sent through email, they would have been blacklisted under spam. This was junk mail, and it was threatening. It is threatening junk mail. I mean, that's just a perspective that's non-legal, but that's the world I lived in before I got here.
Right, right. Well, there is a legal question of what a notice actually entails, and I think there's definitely reason to start looking at this issue. How far? What does that provision permit the government to do, and did it abuse that provision? And did it go beyond what it was permitted to do?
All that's missing in these letters is, but wait, there's more. I mean, it's that bad. They're direct mail junk letters.
Yeah. And we are, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we are continuing to receive these productions on a monthly basis, just to let our viewers know, up and through February, I believe. At least February.
Excellent. Where do we go from here with the IRS? What cases are still open, still pending? What are we still pushing the hardest at this point?
Well, this one actually is very interesting. It's very new, very recent, and I think it's still very relevant. The main IRS case, believe it or not, we are still talking about the search. Do we have a complete search? The IRS has, again, it's 2017? 4 years later, they still haven't searched a number of those custodians' emails for a 2-week period that covers our FOIA request. So there's still, we're still trying to get a complete search.
We're still trying to get it. Well, thank you. And I know you won't stop. I'm reminded of the IRS is going to learn what Joe Louis said when Max Schmeling said he would stay away from him. And I think it was 1936 heavyweight championship fight. And Joe Louis said, well, he can run, but he can't hide. Well, the same with the IRS, thanks to Ramona and her colleagues, and we appreciate it. And thank you for joining us. It's been great, and I know our viewers out there have had a real eye-opening experience, and we appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much.